Good morning all, and welcome to the Partner Starter Institute live Q&A session. My name is Courtney Cintron, Ingenuity's Partner Engagement Specialist, and I have had so much fun being your host throughout the 5-part virtual series. To provide some context, for the past several years, the Partner Starter Institute has provided new arts partners with all the need-to-know information about working within Chicago Public Schools, building quality programs, best practices in cultivating partnerships, and more. While we still touched on many of these topics throughout this year's Partner Starter series, we were intentional about discussing them through the lens of the current moment and making the content relevant for all partners. The pandemic, economic crisis, and profound and essential movements regarding anti-racism and systemic oppression demand that we rethink arts education and the role of partnerships. Thus, the goal of this series was really for you to understand how approaches to partnerships must be responsive to current needs and shifts within the sector and CPS, what you can do to prepare for these shifts, and what resources are available to help you navigate. So we hope that you have found the modules to be a helpful jumping off point, and that today will really serve as useful in answering some of your remaining questions. But before I introduce today's panelists, let's see who's out there tuning in. So let's take a minute to complete the following poll. Okay, great. Well, I see that we have quite a few existing partners, which is wonderful. We also have some new partners and some other folks joining us. We have a lot of theater and drama folks out there. That's wonderful. And then a pretty good representation across discipline otherwise. So thank you so much for joining us today. That's incredible. I'm so happy. We're thrilled to have you all here with us. So now allow me to briefly introduce our panel. I'm just going to ask that each panel member join us back on camera here for a moment. And please wave hello when you hear your name. So I'll give everyone just a minute there to get back on camera and get comfortable. Okay, here we go. Okay, so joining us today is Christopher Chantson, Ingenuity's Director of Development. Wave hello there. Emily Cibelli, Ingenuity's Senior Data Analyst. Ola Faleti, Ingenuity's Manager of the Creative Schools Fund. Breana Hernandez, Ingenuity's Development Manager. Ayriole Frost, Executive Director of Shift Englewood Youth Orchestra. Jess Rodrigue, the CPS Department of Arts Education's Operations Specialist. And Nicole Upton, Ingenuity's Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning. Thank you so much, panelists. I am also joined here today by Anna Corner, our amazing Partnerships and Professional Learning intern. Anna has spent the last several months co-creating and organizing this year's Partner Starter Institute into all that it is. She'll be joining us again in just a couple of minutes to provide us with a Partner Starter module refresh. Thank you, Anna. Now, before I get started, allow me to explain the flow for today's panel conversation. We will be moving through today's session module by module. For each module, we have selected 2 to 3 of the most frequently asked questions submitted in the Q&A forum to address with our panelists. We will then allot time after each module for you to enter any relevant questions related to the module into the chat before moving on. So remember, we'll select 1 question to address with the panelists once again after each module. So please know that we'll likely only have time for 1 question per module and won't be able to answer every question. However, for the questions that do go unanswered, we will either follow up via email or address your question in an FAQ paper that will be released in the following week. So rest assured. So now I'm going to pass it back to Anna to give you a quick refresher on the modular series, and then I'll be back in just a moment.
Thanks, Courtney. So just as Courtney said, once again, my name is Anna Corner, and I was the professional learning intern this summer, and I've had so much fun putting together the Partner Starter Institute for you all, so I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, allow me to give you a quick little refresher. So we started off with Module 1, Shifting Practice, Preparing for Partnerships. This module featured myself and Nicole Upton, and we introduced the Partner Starter series. We discussed the importance of new approaches to partnerships in the current landscape, the Arts Ed Response Collective, and shifts in the sector at large. Module 2 was Partner Guidelines, Addressing the Knowns and Unknowns. This module featured Jess Rodrigue from CPS, Department of Arts Education. She covered the role of the DAE. She discussed how to become a vendor, remote learning impacts, and also where you can go to find updates. Module 3, Artlook and Data, using data to drive equitable partnership practices. This module featured Emily Cibelli and Eli Hinojosa, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. They covered using Artlook to identify gaps in art education, customized reporting, and more. Module 4, Professional Learning, Enhancing Impactful Programs. Once again, this module featured Nicole Upton as well as Ayriole Frost. They discussed Ingenuity's professional learning programs that are available at your disposal. They discussed how you can use the Art Partners standards of practice to build strong, impactful programs, and more. Our fifth and final module was Funding Partnership Work, New Approaches to Sustainability. This module featured the Ingenuity Development Team, Christopher Chantson and Breana Hernandez, as well as our Creative Schools Fund team, Ola Faleti and Eli Cole. They discussed topics such as the current state of philanthropy, as well as what you can anticipate in the coming year regarding the Creative Schools Fund. Now, if you weren't able to watch a module you intended to, no worries. You can visit our website at ingenuity-inc.org, which will connect you with all of the videos, additional resources, reflection questions, and more. And I will drop that link in the chat. All right, Courtney, I think we are ready to start questions for Module 1, Shifting Practice, Preparing for Partnerships.
Thanks, Anna, for the refresh. So joining us from Module 1 is Nicole Upton, Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning. Give Nicole a moment to get on camera here. There she is. Okay, great. Hi, Nicole. Nicole, for some reason your audio is a little low. Maybe we can.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, there we go. That's perfect.
Okay.
Fantastic. So our viewers out there would like to know, what did we hear and learn as a result of the Arts Ed Response Collective, or ARC process?
Would they now?
And
okay.
If you could also provide us with a brief recap on what ARC is, that would be helpful context for viewers out there that may not know.
Of course. So thanks for that question, everyone out there. Hello and good morning, my friends. It's good to be with you virtually here. I hope you're hanging in there and staying healthy and well right now, most important, and taking care of yourselves and those that you love in this really challenging time. So thanks for the question about ARC. ARC stands for Arts Ed Response Collaborative. And pretty soon after we saw the writing on the wall of COVID-19 and the impacts that it was not only going to have certainly on arts education, but all of the work that we're doing, Ingenuity in true fashion, true to kind of our identity, decided to get a group of folks together to really talk about what the pressing challenges were, how those challenges were evolving, and what as a sector we would need to do to address those challenges coming into the next school year and beyond. We learned a lot in that process. We engaged with hundreds of people from many different stakeholder groups over the course of several weeks, and really heard some emerging themes that were similar. We heard the challenges and we heard the desires for working and continuing arts education within our schools. We really heard, I think you're getting a bit of a preview here in advance of the ARC report release, but there were really 3 calls to action that you're going to hear expressed in the final ARC report. And they're pretty significant, and again, were very shared across all of the conversations that we had. The first and kind of most important thing that has been woven through everything is a call to deepen and broaden our commitment to equity, to more explicitly include racial justice, economic parity, and human dignity. That's not something new in many ways that we have said as a sector before, but I think how we do that and how we hold ourselves accountable to equity is what you will see kind of being elevated and really pushed on in this ARC report. The second area that has come up as a really clear and existing theme is that we have a great need right now to exercise what we're calling radical flexibility in order to build and sustain and really protect the arts education sector and to protect arts education access for students. Radical flexibility is really challenging right now. Clearly, we are still dealing with many unknown questions. I know even just today, CPS is planning on sending out more guidance on the virtual learning strategy, but it certainly will require flexibility like we have never had to try before in this next phase of our work. And then the third really clear call to action that you will see in ARC is that, you know, we have a realization that in order to really respond to those emerging needs and to the kind of shifting landscape that we anticipate we will be in for the next year at least, it really requires a spirit of knowledge sharing and professional learning. We have a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of assets, and collectively as a community, we are stronger. One of my kind of phrases that I pull up from the ARC process frequently is that when we don't prioritize the learning of us as adults, we deprioritize the learning of our students. We have a lot to learn going into this year about how to do virtual learning, about how to transfer our programs from an in-person to a virtual space. And there are certainly a lot of questions that we have around that. So our ability to collectively gather as a sector to learn not only with each other, but from each other is going to be an emerging theme that you will see in the ARC report.
Okay, thank you, Nicole, for that overview. Can you also, as a related question, tell us when will the ARC report likely be released?
Oh, Courtney, when? So we're working hard on finalizing that right now. We're working with our ARC advisory committee to do a final round of kind of edits and look-fors to make sure there aren't any gaps in that report. We hope to have that out to you in the next couple of weeks at the latest. So be on the lookout for that. I think it's an incredibly exciting document. I think it's a really incredible reflection of the community voice, and I am eager and looking forward to blasting it out to everybody soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. So at this time, please enter any questions related to ARC or Module 1 into the chat, and we'll select one for Nicole to answer here. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and come up with a question.
In the meantime, I can provide a song for everyone.
What is it?
Oh, give me a tune.
Let's see here.
So I see we have some questions about tier designation. We're going to hold on those until we're at that module. Any questions on the kind of shifting landscape and preparing for partnerships in this new phrase? How will the ARC report be used? That's a great question, Lynn. I think it's a call to action for all of the sector. It's really specifically aimed, I would say, at several stakeholders and kind of the stakeholders that support around the CPS system. So that means arts partners and teaching artists, it means the philanthropic community, and it also means Ingenuity directly. The ARC report has specific outcomes and goals associated with it. that all fall under those kind of 3 priority areas that I just shared with you. There are actions within that ARC document, and also indicators for how we'll measure our progress, not only as individual organizations, but also as a sector. There are guiding questions to help us unpack how to accomplish some of these goals, but it is meant to provide both a vision, but also some tangible steps forward in how we deal with the next year.
Okay, ARC, thank you, Nicole. That's super helpful. That's it for the first module there. So that was our first round, and that's the same kind of format you can anticipate for the rest of the modules here. So thank you. Nicole, you can stay on screen here, but moving on to Module 2, Partner Guidelines Addressing the Knowns and Unknowns. So joining us from this module is Jess Rodrigue, Operations Specialist with the CPS Department of Arts Education. Nicole will also be staying on with us in this portion to provide an update on the new Partner RFQ, which we also received some questions about. So I'll wait here for Jess to join us on camera here. Okay, there you are. Fantastic, Jess. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Okay, Jess, inquiring minds would like to know, why do partners need a tier designation? And maybe for those partners who are new or joining us for the first time here and did not view the module, what is a tier designation?
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here and to talk to you about CPS and some of the new systems that are in place to work remotely with students. So I know there are lots of questions about the tier designations and how that system works and why it's been established. But just to start off at the top, to ensure the health and safety of our students and their families during remote learning, the district has established this framework for schools to use when engaging with vendors, service providers, so arts partners like yourselves. We really encourage arts partners who plan to work in a remote environment with CPS to work with one of their partner schools to gain a Tier 1 status. A school principal will sponsor that request. It should take around 48 hours or so for that process to take place, so it's not a long process, but still plan in advance. And a Tier 1 designation will allow you to interact with CPS staff, students, and families. We also encourage everyone to have a Gmail account because CPS does operate in the Google platforms. So you will use Google Meets to operate in that system, that remote environment. And I also encourage folks to confirm that you have an active vendor number before you start that process. So say your vendor number has gone inactive or you're a new arts partner, you want to make sure that you are a vendor first. So you'll want to make sure to take care of that process before you begin any tier designations. And we really encourage partners to think about that Tier 1 status. It will really provide you everything you need at this time to interact with the students and families. And we do encourage folks to go through the school, partly because we really, schools make their own decisions about their plans, and we don't have enough people in our team to sort of oversee every school's plans, especially with their new remote plans that they'll start to build. So we really encourage you to work with them in concert so that they have an understanding of what your needs are and that the two of you build your plans together. So that I know that there's lots of questions about us sort of helping gain that, and we'll sort of help navigate the process for sure. I'm happy to help navigate that with folks, but we really want to make sure that you're working in partnership with your school principals to build that.
Great, thank you, Jess, for providing some clarity around the tier designation. So another question here is, if I had a background check completed last year, do I need another for this upcoming school year?
So I will say you don't need to get a continual background check. Principals are, allowed to sort of make their own calls about when they want someone to get a background check or not. But for the most part, if you had a CPS background check, I will sort of state just a reminder that if you work for another organization and, you know, there are children in that facility and they require their own background check, CPS can't use somebody else's background check. So you will need to make sure that you get a background check that's a CPS background check, but not a second one by any means.
Okay, thank you. So CPS background check. Nicole, back to you. Here's a somewhat related question to the conversation we've been having. What is the Arts Partner RFQ? And also, how is it different from the last RFQ that CPS released? And is it necessary to go through this process if we are already an approved vendor?
Great question. And I just want to preface this part of our conversation by saying Ingenuity is not sponsoring or able to assist partners in this. And also CPS Department of Arts Education, the reason Jess isn't speaking on this is because their department is not allowed to engage the partner community around this due to kind of ethics and kind of measures of protection and confidentiality. So I just wanted to kind of state that out loud first. So what you're hearing on the RFQ is primarily kind of things that I know about it, things that I have seen through the application and the RFQ itself, and also kind of our thoughts about it. So this RFQ is actually very different from the last RFQ that happened several years ago. Some of you may have been involved in that RFQ the first time, and some of you, let's be honest, may have had really mixed feelings about what that was like and how valuable that was to you. I'll just be honest about that. This is really different, and it has been designed to be something very, very different from that first one. The first one was really just kind of focused on the liability and the pricing. This RFQ is actually really focused on that Q, that quality piece. There are a number of questions in the RFQ that are asking about the quality of your program, the actual content of your curriculum, and how you think about that content and delivering it to students. So why should you apply? I think this is an important piece. And this is even if you provide low cost or no cost services. There are a number of reasons I'm going to pluck out here. One is that the CPS schools, networks, offices, and departments will be able to engage with those kind of qualified arts partners without kind of necessitating a full advertisement for each engagement. So you're kind of this kind of prime group of qualified vendors that the district will be able to point to. You know, I know oftentimes schools ask us at Ingenuity, they ask our CPS counterparts like, hey, which partner should I use? And in traditional terms, Ingenuity will continue to say, we don't play favorites. You know, here's Artlook. We can help you search for the kind of partner you're looking for, but we don't want to say, well, this partner we think is quality and this partner we don't. That's not our place, and that is not the work that we want to be doing. We want to be here to support you. This, however, will allow the district to kind of point to a list and say, we know these folks are quality vendors and we are comfortable making those connections to schools. There also might be an opportunity in this RFQ process to get invitation-only grants or opportunities from the district. Those may or may not be made exclusively available to this group of arts partners who are qualified. And then it's also possible that in the future, a partner's Artlook profile page could actually indicate or have some kind of stamp of that quality status on it, and potentially even be a searchable function within Artlook itself. And then finally, this is a kind of key one to take away. Arts partners will automatically be designated with a Tier 1 status, remote learning provider if they're qualified as part of this RFQ, and that's to provide residencies, workshops, or master classes, and in-school performances in an online format as well. There is a pre-submittal conference, a Q&A session that is happening on August 10th at 12:30 p.m. I'm going to drop the link for that in the chat. And if you have questions, the CPS procurement website does list a contact name and email address From procurement, again, the CPS Department of Arts Education will not be able to respond to your questions directly on this. They all have to go through this one contact person at procurement, and I will also drop that information in the chat for you. So I may not have all the answers for you as arts partners. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this. But again, I think it's an important RFQ and something that I would highly encourage everybody to do if they can.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole, for clarifying the RFQ process and the importance of it. At this time, please enter any questions related to Module 2 into the chat, and we'll select one for Jess or Nicole to answer as applicable. So it looks like we already have some in there. So our team is gonna select one in just a moment.
I can answer one kind of while you're doing that about the RFQ, why it was put forward now. This RFQ has been in process for several months. It's been something that the Department of Arts Education has been working on. And I think they were able to pivot the application kind of quickly to include the remote learning experiences. But this RFQ process has actually been something the department's been working on for several months.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And maybe this vendor-related question here for Jess. Must vendors be local to Chicago as delivery is virtual?
No, you do not need to be local with Chicago to be a vendor. You don't even have to be in the state of Illinois. You will need to become a vendor, there are some forms you need to complete. One of them being that you need an Illinois Certificate of Good Standing, which you can get regardless of whether your business resides in the state of Illinois or not. And I'll quickly answer, I see some questions about the tier and whether or not you need all your partner principals to sponsor that request, and you do not. You just need one of those principals to help you out and fill out a quick form. It really is only it's a short form, and one of them can quickly do that for you.
Okay, thank you, Jess and Nicole.
I just answer one other quick question. I think it's an important one. What's the turnaround time on this? I don't have a timeline for the turnaround, but I can tell you that this is a pretty extensive application. And so I know the reviewal process is going to be, it will take some time for this to be reviewed and approved and then go through and finalize through the Department of Procurement. So as this relates to the beginning of the school year, I wouldn't plan on this being your immediate jump into Tier 1 status. It's a little bit more of the longer term jump into Tier 1 status.
Nicole, actually, I'm gonna shoot this question back up to both of you one more time here. So to clarify, once we have Tier 1 status, that is good for every school, but just needs to be sponsored by one principal.
That is correct, yes. You only need it sponsored once and then you are good to go.
Okay, great.
But the measure twice, cut once.
So just an important reminder here that we will be collecting questions from the chat that we were unable to get to just now and creating an FAQ paper to send out next week. So if your question went unanswered here, no worries, we're going to get to it and send it out to you. But we do have a few other modules to get to, so we're moving along here now. Sorry about that. But thank you again, Nicole and Jess, for joining us. And Nicole will speak back in just a little bit. Thank you. Okay. So moving on to Module 3, Art Look and Data, using data to drive equitable partnership practices. Joining us for this module is Emily Cibelli, Ingenuity Senior Data Analyst. Hi, Emily.
Hi, everyone. Nice to join you today.
Thank you. Emily, our viewers out there would like to know, what is the best way to share programming and virtual resources right now?
Yeah, of course. We know that everyone has had to rethink their programming as everything is shifting online. So to try and make that process a little bit easier, we've reconfigured Outlook to make sure that we can better capture programs and resources from partners that can be offered remotely or online. So if you are a partner with these types of programs, or you have some resources that you'd like to be able to share virtually, here's what you need to do. When you log into Outlook, you'll add a program as you would in any other year, but you want to make sure that that program has a online or virtual program type tag attached to it. So just select online virtual from the program type section, And then this will make sure that your program is automatically registered in Artlook's new virtual learning library. And this library is an online website, a sort of collection of online programs and resources offered by Artlook partners all across the country, actually. So that'll give you the opportunity to share whatever you've got that can be accessed virtually with the broader arts education community, not just in Chicago, but also in our partner cities, including Maryland, Sacramento, New Orleans, Houston. Folks all across the country are using this resource. So I will put the URL for the virtual learning library in the chat right now. It's artlookmap.com/library. So do go ahead if you've got those programs, share them via your usual Artlook login, and they'll pop right into the library.
Great, thank you. Okay, and second question, especially for our newer partners out there, is Artlook free to use? And maybe we can just give a quick recap on what Artlook is if anyone's new out there.
Yeah, great idea. So for our new partners, and as a reminder for our returning partners, Artlook is our virtual online platform that allows you as a partner to tell the entire arts education community in the city of Chicago a little bit about your organization, your mission statement, the disciplines you offer, and then a detailed programming list of all of the arts education programs that you offer to CPS schools. So the goal of Artlook is to sort of provide a matchmaking service between partners working in the city and CPS schools looking for arts programs. So you can provide information to the system about your programs, schools provide information to us about what's going on in their building, and then you can search for one another to find the best schools that meet the programs that you offer and for schools to come find you. So just a note that Artlook is always entirely free to use, so there's never any charge to use it. And we hope that you'll use it to help capture and share your programming with the whole arts education community in Chicago. At the same time, we at Ingenuity use it to help understand the distribution of resources across the district and the city. And that allows us to identify opportunities for new programming, new resources, new funding opportunities, and all working towards the goal of ensuring more equitable access to arts programming across the entire city.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. Let's see here. And also, if you have any more questions about Artlook or how to start that process and get on Artlook, be sure to check out Module 3, which you can access through our website or on Ingenuity's YouTube channel as well. Okay, so at this time, once again, please enter any questions related to Module 3 into the chat, and we'll select one here for Emily to answer. If there are any questions. Okay, give it just one more second, see if anyone wants to enter a question here.
If folks don't have questions now, but they think of one later, I'll drop my email in the chat as well. You can reach out to me at any time if you need help getting set up with an Artlook profile.
Excellent. Okay, I think we're gonna move on. Thank you, Emily, so much. Take care. Okay, so moving on to Module 4, Professional Learning, Enhancing Impactful Programs. Joining us again is Nicole Upton, Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning at Ingenuity, and Ayriole Frost, Executive Director of Shift Englewood Youth Orchestra and Ingenuity's Partnerships and Professional Learning Panel Chair. Hello, Ayriole and Nicole, welcome back. Okay, so Team PPL, our viewers out there would like to know, first for Nicole, what are some of the professional learning topics that partners can anticipate this upcoming season? Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek and maybe-
I totally can. This next season for PPL is really exciting. And I think through the ARC process, we have heard some very clear learning needs expressed by the community, and Courtney and I have been working really hard on starting to map out what that will look like. And we're really excited also to continue exploring this kind of virtual learning model. It's been kind of thrown upon us, but also a really exciting challenge that we are eager to continue to explore. So there were several training ideas that have come up through the ARC process directly. Maybe first and foremost is remote learning adaptation of programs. We're all in that space of trying to understand how to take what we do online. I think whether or not CPS would have decided to go hybrid or all virtual in this first quarter, we still would have had that need based on that kind of preliminary framework that CPS released. So how do we do that? How do we take our programs online? How do we figure out how do we engage kids in a creative artistic process? So you can anticipate that we're going to be doing some trainings around that, and also focusing and having opportunities to focus on the discipline by discipline differences in those approaches. Certainly trauma-informed practices and social emotional learning are high on everybody's minds right now. We pivoted pretty quickly. You may have seen that we have already done 2 trauma-related institutes. Those are both archived and available for your viewing on the Ingenuity YouTube site, our YouTube channel. And we have a 3rd trauma-informed session coming up next Friday?
August 28th.
Thank you, August 28th. And that's a live Q&A session to kind of help us parse through the information from the prior 2 sessions and figure out where we go next, get some immediate resources. That is not the only trauma training that we are going to be doing this year. It is one first step into some trauma training, and Courtney and I are really excited in the midst right now of planning some really interesting partnerships in unpacking how we address trauma in our arts program. So stay tuned for more of that. Another thing that came up in the ARC process were questions around restorative justice and how we center youth voice in our programming and creative youth development. Arts integration was also a topic that people were interested in kind of deepening, again, as it especially relates to virtual online learning. And then finally, a request and a call for kind of continued updates and kind of more on the pulse information of what's happening within the district. So, you know, we know that there's a lot of information coming at you, and we know that sometimes the channels for those communications can be bumpy or lumpy or not super clear, or maybe you know one kind of lane and you don't know the other lane. And so one of the things we're going to be providing is more frequent and kind of more sustained engagements with the sector to provide updates on what's happening and what that means for your work.
Thank you, Nicole. Yay, PBL. Okay, Ayriole, for you, viewers would like to know, what are some elements of the Arts Partner Standards of Practice that partners should really be zeroing in on for the coming school year? And maybe we can just give like a brief high-level overview of what the Arts Partner Standards of Practice are as well for those who may be new.
Yeah, so the Arts Partner Standards of Practice are a framework of guidelines for creating programming that is of the highest quality. And the APSP was put together a few years ago with several conversations from different stakeholders all over the sector of Chicago for how to increase the quality of arts education in Chicago. So I think for this time, the most important one to sort of zero in on is probably also the most difficult, and that is making content that is student-centered. So especially in terms of quality, and we all know that quality is going to be very different during this time where we can't be face-to-face and we can't interact in the same room. But I think it's really important to center student voice in what we're doing and to really work with students to design programming that's relevant to them, especially because now we have a little bit more of an opportunity to really engage with those individual students. So the other thing that kind of goes along with that also is probably one of the more difficult things to do, but I think really important for this time, is really designing programming with the school communities that we're in and finding out what is the most important arts programming for those communities and helping to design that programming together. We really, with everything going on right now, it's difficult to figure out exactly what each school community might need, and we may not already have in the bag what their requirements are for getting the best arts education to their students.
Okay, thank you, Ayriole, so much. Thank you to you both. At this time, please enter any questions in relationship to Module 4 into the chat. So anything related to professional learning, arts partner standards of practice, into the chat, and we'll select one for Nicole or Ayriole to answer as applicable. Take a few moments to do that. Monitoring here. Do, 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 do.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good too. Okay, that's not bad. Yeah. Okay, well then I think we're all good here and we'll move. Oh, okay. Someone asked a question quickly, Nicole, about the teaching artist stipends.
Yeah, great question. So many of you might know last year we began, which is a pretty big and exciting thing for us, a stipend program for teaching artists to attend training. We were providing organizations, or the teaching artist, I should say, with a $50 per hour stipend. And we were expecting and hoping that arts organizations would match that payment and also send an additional teaching artist and pay that teaching artist. That does not seem like the right approach to us this year based on the economy and what is happening within arts organizations. So right now we do plan to do some kind of stipend program. Hang tight with us as we begin to announce more of our professional learning. I think that program is going to be evolving a bit again to really be responsive to where organizations are at financially right now. So more to come on that. It's not going away. It's just kind of probably being reshaped into something a little bit different.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Ayriole, so much. And now for our final module of the series, Module 5, Funding Partnership Work, New Approaches to Sustainability. So we have two Ingenuity teams joining us for this portion of the conversation. Ingenuity's development team, Christopher Chantson and Breana Hernandez, and Ola Faleti, manager of the Creative Schools Fund. Okay, so we'll give everyone a moment to get on camera here with us. Okay, everyone is, I just couldn't see. Okay, Christopher and Breana, our viewers would like to know, what are some best practices that organizations should consider when creating and or strengthening a case for support? So I think this question is, maybe Breana, you could answer this first one for us.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. One of the ways that, I would answer that is really knowing your work and your core mission is going to be key. We all know that the competition for funding and financial investment, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit, is particularly competitive on a regular basis, especially now, given the economic climate. So, I always say, like, a key takeaway is to be clear and transparent, assuming that the person on the other end, whether you're reading something or you're having a conversation with somebody, that they have absolutely no idea about your organization and all of, the different nuances of your work and your programs, so that you can make sure that, you're able to connect all of those dots for the folks that, you're really going after for the financial support. Christopher, would you add anything else to that?
Yeah, just to reiterate, I think it's important to avoid terminology and nomenclature to the greatest extent possible. Remember that your case for support is going to be read by people who may not know anything about you or your work, and they may not have any expertise in your content area either. So to reiterate what Breana said, keep your language clean and simple to the greatest extent possible. I also think it's important to remember that a case for support is a living and breathing document, and you might need to edit it according to the specific audience that you're trying to cultivate. So, for example, foundations and corporations might be more likely to be interested in seeing how your work aligns with their respective priorities, and whereas individual donors might be a little bit more interested in some of the human impact stories of a more personal nature. While you should always remain true to who you are as an organization, I think there's great value in having potentially several versions of your case for support depending on the circumstances and the funder.
Okay, thank you, Breana and Christopher. Christopher, I have another question here, somewhat related. How do you build a relationship with a new donor that may have predetermined ideas for their investment that may not align to your organization's current strategies or strengths?
That's a really great question. I think it's important to make sure that you both have a clear understanding of your respective interests. If it's possible, have a phone or a virtual call with this potential donor to make sure that you've gotten full context on what the donor wants and that you've been able to communicate honestly and openly about how you do your work. A lot gets lost in email translation, so I think you should try to have a clarifying conversation to the greatest extent possible. After that conversation, if it's clear that your interests are not aligned, I know it's hard to do, trust me, I know, but it's okay and necessary to respectfully decline. As nonprofit organizations, we have to be really careful about our mission creep and chasing the money when it might steer us away from our primary goals and strategies. Don't burn any bridges, but remain true to yourself and your organization and how you go about doing your work. Breana, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I think so. I think you bring up a great point about maintaining this balance to make sure that we as nonprofit organizations aren't jeopardizing the integrity of what it is that we do. So I certainly think that there are ways that we can navigate these instances without damaging those relationships. And I think we also need to give the benefit of the doubt to donors. Most people would rather have a clear path, and they're very intentional about where they want to place their investment. We're seeing more and more informed donors in this day and age, and so I think it's just really important, just like you said, to be clear and open and honest, and also recognizing that as nonprofit organizations, I feel like time and time again, we're constantly pushed into this corner from different supporters that have this idea of where they want to place that investment, how they want their legacy to look, which is phenomenal. But if it doesn't necessarily align to your priorities, I think there's certainly ways around that, and just having those conversations, because these are relationships, and just respectfully standing your ground and knowing essentially where that line is for your organization, so that you can hold that firm, and really just be confident in that decision you make. And sometimes, that leads to an even stronger and more sustainable donor relationship. So I think certainly don't shy away from exploring other options, even if someone says, this is what I want to do, don't necessarily back away from that. Have that conversation, explore what it is, why it is they're looking at things in a certain way, and see if that you can come to a common ground. And if not, maybe pause that relationship or point them in another direction, and I feel like the rest usually ends up playing out.
Okay, well, thank you, Breana and Christopher, for those really keen insights on donor relationships. And Ola, if you're out there, I also have some questions for you.
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Viewers would like to know, in regards to the Creative Schools Fund, when can we expect the 2020-21 CSF application to open?
That is an excellent question. First of all, good morning. It is so great to be with you all. I know I'm a new face to most, if not all of you, since I've recently joined the CSF team. So I look forward to working with you all more over the course of the year. And as far as when the applications will open, the CSF team, in partnership with the good folks at CPS DAE, have really been reworking and revising the CSF guidelines just in light of both the flexibility that will need to be required as far as learning formats go, and also being responsive to the climate that we're in, the rising urge and desire to really focus on anti-racism work. So with those things in mind, we are revising the CSF to still support quality arts, along with supporting community engagement through art. Arts as a tool of documenting what's happening right now during this very historic time for our young people and for our communities, and also arts as a tool to fuel anti-racism. So all of that to say, we anticipate sometime in late August, the cycle will open, but stay tuned for more on that.
Excellent, thank you, Ola. And one more question for you. Will the CSF grant period be the same as in previous years? I know you mentioned a little bit about flexibility, but can you expand on that a bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So in the spirit of the radical flexibility that Nicole mentioned earlier, the answer to this is no. In previous years, the grant period has been between January and June. So knowing that this school year is very uncertain, we don't know what in-person, remote, and hybrid learning will look like over the course of the whole year. So we are anticipating more flexibility in terms of allowing schools to set their own grant periods, and then more flexibility in the sense that we anticipate more of a rolling cycle. So there will be multiple opportunities to apply for funds rather than just all at the beginning of the year.
Great, thank you, Ola. So once again, at this time, please enter any questions related to Module 5 into the chat box, and we'll select one for either Breana, Christopher, or Ola to respond to as applicable. And then maybe in the chat, please indicate who your question is for, if possible. Okay, looks like we have some coming in. We'll give a couple other moments. Okay, looks like we have one here. Will partners that didn't get, so this is for Ola, pardon me.
Yes.
Will partners that didn't get to have a full CSF experience have priority?
That is a great question. So I'm interpreting this to mean maybe schools that were funded this past year and did not get to carry out or fully implement the programming in light of schools closing and remote learning and all of that. The answer to that, I don't have a clear answer to that for you just yet. We do know that a lot of our partners from last year were not able to complete programming and had to do the best they could to make things work. That's something that we'll definitely consider going forward. I can't promise priority necessarily, but also much of this is still in development and in the works. So I will link my email below if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Ola.
Because I know that wasn't necessarily the clearest answer.
We do have one more CSF question that I'd like to throw your way. Will the funding for the Creative Schools Fund grants this year be on the same scale as 2020, 2021? I think they meant 20.
Oh, yes, I figured. Another good question. On the same scale, so I'm kind of interpreting that to mean similar amounts or the same amounts. I mean, as far as the amount that's going to be funded, that will not change, but there will be changes around the kinds of initiatives that we are going to fund, specifically those that are, again, responsive to the current times that we're in. And that'll be something that'll be more clear once we officially release those grant guidelines.
Thank you so much, Ola.
If I can just add to that as well, I think it's important to clarify that funding for the Creative Schools Fund in terms of how much money we're actually able to get out the door to arts partners also depends on how much in private resources we're able to secure at Ingenuity. We recognize that we're going into a very unusual time. I know for all of you arts partners too, the philanthropic environment is so uncertain, and we are competing for limited number of dollars, particularly when many funders have pivoted to basic human needs. So I think we will proceed with the portfolio grant-making strategies that Ola has laid out. As always, with every year, the amount of money that we're able to put out depends on the resources that we're able to secure to support the fund in general.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Christopher, Ola, and Breana for your insights there. Please stay on the screen. But that concludes the Q&A portion of today's Partner Starter, but don't go anywhere. I would like to invite all of our panelists back on the screen for just a moment here. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of you today for your time and energy that you put into making this year's Partner Starter unique and timely, and also for all of the amazing bloopers that we got out of recording the modules. And also a big thank you to our audience members for attending and engaging with us around these critical topics. We really hope that you found them to be helpful in thinking about how we might approach shifting practice and programs this upcoming school year. I also want to give another big shout out to the amazing Anna Corner, our professional learning intern, for all of her amazing work on putting the Partner Starter Institute together. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, panelists. Before you head out today, though, I just have a few short updates and announcements. So if you can hold tight for just a few minutes longer, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so coming up on August 28th, as Nicole mentioned earlier, actually, Ingenuity is hosting session 3 of a 3-part trauma-informed care series in collaboration with the Illinois ACEs Response Collaborative. So this final session, Applying Trauma-Informed Principles in Arts Education, How Creativity Builds Resilience and Promotes Thriving Across the Lifespan, it's a long title, will bring together arts educators who are using trauma-informed principles and socially just frameworks in the arts. And our panelists joining us on that day will discuss how trauma-informed practice and resilience building informs their programming, the results they have seen in students and communities, and how audience members may integrate these ideas into their own arts education and work. So those first 2 sessions are available on Ingenuity's YouTube channel. So if you kind of want to catch up and get the 101 on the first 2 sessions, go ahead and check those out. And then you can register in advance for this panel session via Ingenuity's website, and we'll also drop the link in the chat for you to get registered as well. Okay, and also please share your Partner Starter feedback with us in the exit survey. Anna is going to share that link in the chat as well, but you should also be redirected to the survey when you exit the Zoom room. Your feedback is, as always, very important to us, and it helps us to continue to improve events like these ones. And so this concludes this year's Partner Starter Institute series, but don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions that you might have. Thank you again for joining us today. It's so amazing to have all of you here, and we're really hopeful that this content was helpful for you. And thank you again, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you.